Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Sunday. Thanks for coming today for our final winter camp presentation for this season. We're really grateful that you're all here. Sorry, I'm just doing some. My name's Peter Strong. I am. Hold on. I am the director and co-owner of Racing Magpie here in Rapid City, South Dakota. On behalf of our entire team, I want to welcome all of you to an exciting presentation for our final winter camp of the season with this amazing session by Geraldine Gozen Center. At Racing Magpie, we're dedicated to elevating and amplifying Native and other artists and their communities through educational, cultural, and research programs, all in the Lakota spirit of being a good relative. As part of that being a good relative, this program, Winter Camp, is attempting to reimagine the Lakota Winter Camp model of problem solving and community building in today's world by digging deeper into Lakota beliefs, creativity, culture, and community understandings. While these events are open to the public, and we're saving them on our Facebook videos and our YouTube channel, they will always center and uplift Lakota community members as both presenters and attendees. As plants and trees focus their energy on building strength and growing from the roots during the winter, our community will join to strengthen and grow together each year through sharing and learning. Part of my job is to thank our sponsors for their generous support. So I'd like to thank the South Dakota Humanities Council, which is an affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Bush Foundation, and a direct grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities themselves. Also, we've been asked many times how our supporters can contribute to our work as well in this program. I'd suggest at least two ways in these times of virtual learning and living and community care that you could do that. One is you can make a donation to Magpie Creative, which is our nonprofit partner in our work. You can donate through their Facebook page, that's Magpie Creative, or go to our website and find the address to mail in a donation. The other thing is to locate, identify Native artists and support them, and makers and creatives. Support them by searching them out, buying art, downloading their music, buying gifts for others, or self-care for yourself, but buy it directly from artists and creatives. Things like Venmo and PayPal are turning out to be amazing ways to support artists at this time. And I think the last thing for housekeeping, just feel free to type your questions into the comment section on Facebook or the chat in Zoom if you're joining us on Zoom Live. And I will read them to Geraldine during her presentation. But we really are looking forward to a good conversation and questions and all kinds of things like that. So thank you all again for joining us. And with no more delay, I would like to present to you Geraldine Gozen Center.
Am I on mute? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
You're good.
Okay. So good afternoon, and thank you, Peter, and for having me on here and your organizations. I'm going to do a presentation today on the food and diet of the Lakota, the Plains Indigenous people. I'm going to introduce myself. I'll have presentations, and I welcome questions at any time. And I just want to let you know that this is a work in progress, and these are my perceptions of, how I feel about my research of what has with my culture. Jeez, I'm sorry. Uh-oh, it's not working. There you go. Nap chante nape wia. Chante washte napa Tiospaye. How Spukashni inap muachi. I'm sorry. How Spukashni imachiate. My name is Ambitious Woman, but I go by Jerry Gozen Center or Geraldine. Come from Pine Ridge. I served 8 years in the military, 5 years National Guards. I'm an entrepreneur, and I have a bachelor's degree in human service and a minor in counseling. I grew up in Pine Ridge, and my family, my Tiospaye is from Wamblee. If you can you see it on the map up there? I put a picture of my great-grandfather, Chief Lip, up there. And I'm a proud mother of 4 daughters, and I'm an unchi, and I have many grandchildren. And some of these are really old pictures because the little girl in the blonde is like 20 years old now, so I didn't have time to update it. So let's see, I grew up, whoops, let me go back. I grew up in a large Catholic family, and I was born in Igloo, South Dakota, in an Army depot, and it's closed down now over there by Edgemont. And I attended a variety of boarding school, and I'm a high school dropout. There's a picture of me there with my family and my grandmother, Kate Gozen Center. She died in 1974, the same year that I joined the Army. And then down on the right-hand corner, or maybe it's left for you, is a picture of Flandre Indian School, and one of the pictures I took when I was going to school there. And then it's a recent picture of me and my family underneath there. And that chair is for my brother who passed away. Of course, my parents passed away too since then. So these are my ancestors. My grandmother was Kate Gozen Center, and her dad was William Lip, and her daughter was Eva Witt, my mother, and my father was Nathaniel Witt, and he and down below is his family. He's from his mother, his grandmother came from Oklahoma, and on the other side is my mother, and she's the baby on Kate Gozen Center's lap, and the rest of people standing around them is her older brothers and sisters, and that's her dad, John Gozen Center. And this is a this is a historical site out across from Fort Meade, and it talks about my grandfather Lip and how his camp was across from Fort Meade Army Hospital, and that's where he wanted to be on the reservation. He wanted to live there, and we were one of the last families to be moved to the reservation. And so this kind of like tells you about it, and I kind of like it because it documents my family. So I feel compelled to share this information because of my own journey towards decolonization. Plus, I was diagnosed with lupus and other learning disabilities. And so this research helps me understand and deal with myself. And doing these presentations hopefully will motivate me to eat healthier, exercise, and quit eating donuts and cakes. And I'm hoping the story will motivate the younger generation. Mitako Yasin. So this is the food and diet of the Plains Indigenous people. We're going to talk about the pre-colonization, the colonization, and decolonization. So this is a picture that George Catlin did. And these are examples of how our people lived before colonization. And I like this picture because you can see how big the camps are. You can see how big the teepees are. I mean, how far back it goes. And then you can see the men in the corner down there gambling, I suppose, and the women making the leather and kids riding the horse, and you see meat and drying in the background. So, this picture depicts how it was before colonization, and I like it. So let me see here. Our people did not live in one area long enough to accumulate waste. Their movement was based on the movement of the buffalo. And the buffalo was crucial to the Plains Indigenous people. Their life centered around a buffalo hunt. And a lot of the tribes, they followed, the herd. And so in the picture of the map here, the Plains Indigenous are in the yellow And what I found out is men and women had equal status. Both was responsible for producing food. And it was imperious that tribe not be overburdened with children because of the difficulty of transporting them. Women usually had a child every 4 or 5 years to ensure that there weren't too many young children in the camp because they move around a lot. And no child was ever neglected and ignored. And the reason why I put this up there is because I grew up a Catholic family, and my mom had 9 children, and I was in the middle. So, and I used to think, God, so many kids, but now I can understand because, my parents were raised Catholic. And they're very strong in the Tiospaye. Because of this, they had provided a strong safety net for the disadvantaged in tribes, which meant no one went hungry or uncared for. And this is a quote down here by Ella Deloria. It says, Lakota kinship is based on mutual respect. The ultimate test of kinship is not genetic, but behavioral. Be related somehow to everyone you know. And I grew up with that. When I was growing up, people, I used to call people grandmas and aunties, and I tried to help them, and it was kind of like instilled in me, like at a powwow or something, like my dad say, go over there and help feed the elders, and so I like that. And they believed everyone was related, and it always reminds me of my grandmother because she used to always leave a food offering out, and because of her, we would go out and camp and pick berries and dig team slaw and gather plants and herbs. And so this reminds me of her. It says, in our ancestors' world, we believe that everyone and everything was related. Prayers of thanks were offered before and after hunt, thanking their relatives for the four-legged and giving up their lives. And when gathering plants and herbs, food offerings was given back to Mother Earth. And like I said, food offerings are set out to the spirits, which reminds me of my grandmother. I tried to do it for a while, but in today's society, it's just so hard. When my 4 little girls, I used to tell them about it, and I said, from now on, kids, we're going to do that. And then it lasted about a week, and then we forgot. But I think today's society is a little bit different from then. So genetically, our ancestors were high protein eaters. Large amount of fresh meat were cooked and consumed after a kill. And in my research, I found out that our ancestors, they like to prefer the older animals due to the higher nutrition, and also they have the older animals had a lot of fat in it, which I've been doing a lot of research on fat, and that's really important to our diet. And I was looking and I found this French trader's log, and this French trader was saying that he put it in his log how much meat the Lakota people or the Plains Indigenous people ate. He was saying he saw a man eat over 40 pounds in one sitting. And when I read that, I was thinking about my grandson Leroy. He weighed 40 pounds. I was like, wow, that's a lot of meat. And but I grew up being a meat eater too. So, but we didn't eat buffalo. We ate a lot of beef. And so one thing when I learned when I came back, I was in the military, and then I got married and was a military housewife for 25 years. And then when I came back, I worked at the IHS hospital as a housekeeper. So I used to go around and ask different people about the plants and herbs and medicine or everything. And this one guy says, well, I just know that we only ate grass-eating animals. And to me, that was really kind of like, really? That was kind of profane because, my ex-husband, he was a French Creole, and he used to have a t-shirt that said, I'll eat anything that don't eat me. And so, but, it just kind of put it in perspective for me. And then later on, when I read this book by Luther Standing Bear, he put this quote in there. Although I die, I shall continue to live in everything that is. The buffalo eats the grass, and I eat him. And when I die, the earth eats me and sprouts new grass. Therefore, nothing is ever lost, and each thing is in everything forever. And I really like that. And they used every part of the buffalo. And I have this picture up here where you can see how, they use all the stuff to make a teepee, and they use the ribs to make a saddle, and the pounding stone. And so I put a little note down there, like, today we now look at Walmart like we did the buffalo, because, I always run and buy everything at Walmart, food and clothes. It's kind of like the buffalo. And then after, when we had the buffalo kill, that's when I guess everybody ate a lot of meat. And then all the women would make wasna. And wasna is a Lakota word, wa meaning anything, and sna meaning ground up. And it's made mostly of dried berries, dried buffalo, fat, and bone marrow. And our ancestors would together pound all the ingredients and consume when hungry. And this one picture in the corner here reminds me of my grandmother, Kate. In fact, I have her pounding stone. I thought about bringing it out, but she, you know, my dad used to make a shade, and all of us was sitting under and making choke cherry patties and stuff. So that's what it kind of reminds me of. Also, to other people that don't know about it, but the white people call it pemmican. They also had great knowledge of plants that varied with seasonal changes and geographical locations. And choke cherry, I'm talking about choke cherry first. I really like choke cherries a lot. And when I first decided to do this research when I was going to college, I started to read a lot of botanist books, and a lot of them said, do not eat the choke cherry seed. If you do, you will die. And I used to think, wow, we used to pound up the, choke cherry seed and make a patty and dry it. And so later on, I found out that when we pound the seed, the arsenic expires, and what's left over is medicine. And I have here listed what's in it. It's good for anti-aging and cancer and heart disease. And so it's really a really great food to eat. Timpsila is I really like Timpsila too. Also, I love going out to dig it, and it flowers between May and June. You could eat it raw, but we can peel it and braid it together and dry it for the winter. What I usually do with it is I grind it into a powder, because if I put it in my soup, my kids don't know they have it. It's in there. And Timpsila is starchy, glutinous, and contains 7% protein and high in vitamin C. And also, I think it was Craig Howe, he did a presentation on Lewis and Clark. And I think at one time, Sacagawea was sick, and they tried to give her all kinds of medicine, like cut her and make her bleed, all the old medicine they did back then. And what she did is she went out and she dug a lot of Timpsila and ate so much, and that she had, she, threw up and all this. But when she got done, it cured her, or she wasn't sick anymore. And so I really like that story about Timpsila. And bitterroot is a plant that grows near the river, and small portions are eat for toothache, or so I make a tea out of it because it's really good for my inflammation. I forgot to tell you that I have lupus, so my joints hurt all the time. And so I usually drink that. I should have drank some today because I have like a frog in my throat. But they also put it in the sweat lodge, and one of the most popular uses is the root is chewed and kept by the singers to keep their voices strong. So I should have chewed some earlier. Darn it. So this is my most favorite one, wild bergamot. And so it's called Wape Washdemana, but and I think it's called that way when they use it as a medicine. But when they use it as a love charm, it's called Heyaka Pajuta, elk medicine. And I like this this plant. It flowers from July to September. In fact, I make a salve out of this, and because they're and I infuse it, and because it's hot, it has an anti-inflammatory factor, and helps circulation. And it, to me, I feel like I can't live without it because I use it all the time. And another thing that I learned, and I learned a lot just giving this presentation, was because I used to cut my own meat and dry it, and I used to put one of those rags over it to keep the flies away. And this one lady, I can't remember her name, Dakota Hollowhorn's wife, she said that they would soak the dried bergamot in water and spray it on the meat. And I did it, and it kept the meat away. And so I used to spray it on my grandson and on us as well. But and then also when my daughter, she went hunting out on the reservation and she shot a buffalo. And so they were making a buffalo robe out of it. So they talked to this guy in Hot Springs who does a lot of who teaches people how to do that. And he told her the same things, is that soak the bergamot in water and spray it on the buffalo meat as you scrape it to make the rope. And I said, oh yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. But it's also used as a love medicine. And people mix it with fat, and they rub it on themselves and try to find a husband. And I was given this presentation one time for a 7th grade class, and I usually have the herbs with me, and I pass them around, and so people were looking at them, and then the 7th grade boys, they're getting ready to open the jar of bergamot, and I go, well, you know what? If you smell that, don't look at me, because you're gonna fall in love with me, and I can't have that. And so then I forgot I said that to them, and then I was talking later on. I went over there and I asked them, how'd you like the way it smelled? And they put their hands like this and they said, it smelled good, because I guess they were afraid of falling in love with me too. But I thought that was pretty funny. So their thought and process about food was that
Jerry, can I interrupt really quickly? We had a comment on Facebook about Teamsila. I thought I'd share it with you real quick.
Sure.
Lisa said, my daughter wasn't feeling well and couldn't keep anything down. We went out and I dug up Teamsila for her, and she was as good as new not too long after she ate it.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, I do that too, with except I use wojapi with, like, my grandson Leroy. He'd be sick, and I would give him, I'd say, this medicine is gonna help you feel better, and I'd give him the wojapi, and he would say, oh, Nana, it did help. So I thank you for that comment, because that kind of firms the thing with Sacagawea. But they believe that their health was linked to the health of the land, and they also had deep respect for Mother Earth, because she provided everything they needed to live and have good health. And they believe that food not only nourished their physical self, but spiritual and emotional self. And I believe that, because since I've been eating buffalo meat, I feel a lot better. And there's a picture here. This one picture here is a picture of the Black Hills from a satellite. And then here's a picture of the Black Hills made by Amos Badheart Bull. And he made this around in the 1890s or something like that. And it was his version of how the Black Hills looked. And to me, it really amazes me, because, he never flew, or how did he know that? But he drew it almost like that picture. And I thought that was so amazing. So because of this, our ancestors lived in harmony with nature. They were very healthy, and they lived a long time. They had no diabetes, no cancer, or no heart disease. And this is a picture of my grandfather, William Lipp. And one of my relatives told me that he still rode horse at 80 years old and chopped wood. And like, I was thinking, God, if I did that, my bladder would probably fall out or something, but they were so healthy back then, and they didn't have any kind of disease. So I put some information up here that I found, and and Robert Steckel and Dr. Price, Weston Price, and this Sally Warren and Mary Ing, they studied the Lakota people before colonization. And according to Richard Steckel, that they said they had a remarkable nutrient of health and success. They developed a healthy lifestyle that the whites couldn't even match with all even with all the whites' technology. And the Weston Price, who was a dentist, he noticed that most of the native people didn't have any tooth decay or dental deformities. They had broad faces and fine physique. They're probably all breastfed, because I heard breastfeeding does that, so I'm just gonna add that in there. And and then the Sally Fallon and Mary Ing, I really like to read their stuff. They said that the early explorers described the Native American as tall and well-formed. Men can run after a deer for a tired day without resting. One man was nearly 7 foot in stature. I think my grandmother was close to 6 foot too. And they apparently can run down a buffalo on foot and slay it with a knife. And Indians were difficult to kill. They were struck by arrows and he didn't die. They usually recovered from their wounds. So that, and kind of gives you an idea how healthy our ancestors was. But around 1880, they were forced to move to the reservation due to colonization. And colonization is an act of possessing and inhabiting a land by a group of immigrants and their descendants. Oh, before I go on, I was wondering if anybody had any more questions or comments. Okay, well, I'll continue. So I always say, what can anybody think about what was one of the first acts of colonization to the Plains Indigenous people? And I'm not talking about the woodland or the eastland. It was the killing of buffalo near extinction. When the when the colonizers came and they seen that our ancestors depended on the buffalo, they decided in order to control us, they can kill the buffalo off. And so they used to offer $5 for a tongue, and they used to just hunt the buffalo off the trains. And so here's some examples of what they did with the buffalo. And I found this in a book, and it was by Lakota Star Knowledge, and it was Red Cloud's last speech to his people. And he said the government official gave the supernatural powers, the Daku Wakan, the Lakota, had given the Lakotas the buffalo for food and clothing. We told them where the buffalo range, that is our country. We told them the country of the buffaloes was the countries of the Lakotas. We told them the buffalo must have their country and the Lakota must have their buffalo. First time I used to read this, I used to get all teary-eyed when I thought, that is so true, how important the buffalo was to our people. So we were moved to reservation, and we were subjugated to assimilation policies that had a direct impact on our lifestyle and health of people. And here are some of the examples of some policies: the Dolls Act, Manifest Destiny, boarding school, ranching and gardening. I'm not saying they're all bad, but some of it was for example, this I found this in Peer in the archives, and it was a newspaper, and it says Whisper of Resistance, Pine Ridge Indian Boarding School in 1891, where families set up camp in order to be near their children. And I thought, oh my gosh, because that's the same school that I went to and my mother went to, the boarding school in Pine Ridge. And then the Dolls Act, because before the Dolls Act, when the people moved on the reservation, they lived in teepee circles. And then when the Dolls Act was created, they were forced to live out, in a cabin, just like the white person. And it was really to me, I felt like it might have been very traumatic after you're living, in a family circle, and then you have to live by yourself. I can imagine that's pretty hard. And their food changed, and they were issued government rations. And these are some of the examples: is beef, pork, flour, bread, and which made fried bread and gabubu bread, pork and coffee. And these pictures here I like because it shows people lining up for the government rations. And despite the major changes, the people still hunted small games, gathered plants, and they're still relatively healthy, because I know in 1970, when my grandmother died, she was over 100 years old. But I like this bottom picture here because it showed this lady pounding some meat. And then also the box had pork and beans. And I like pork and beans. But the biggest change came to the reservation during the World Wars. World War, that's when a lot of men went off and joined during World War I and II. And then a lot of government programs came on the reservation. And one example is HUD housing. So if you go around the reservation, Pine Ridge, you'll see these cluster homes, because once the men joined the military, a lot of the women were out by themselves. And I guess maybe that's why they built the HUD housing for people to move in. And then the food stamp program and the commodity program started up. The relocation program, where they put you out in a city. And then we became a cash-based economy. And that's actually when the people started getting diabetes. So as a result of colonization, we lost our culture, our land, our voice, our dignity, health and well-being, and we were very ignorant about nutrition. I know I was really ignorant myself, because I really liked bologna sandwiches. And then here's a picture of some Indians going to Hampton University and how they came home and dressed in white man's clothing. Another thing that our people suffered because of colonization is trauma, historical trauma. So if you think about it, our people have lived through many tragic events, the greasy grass, even the boarding school. I mean, that traumatized me, the boarding school. And so it left many of our people as orphans or deeply traumatized. And, like there was the Dolls Act and racism and Wounded Knee. And then I learned that because of this historical trauma, a lot of us are born with low serotonin levels and protein deficiency, which I believe, this is my thing, that it causes depression. Because I'm depressed, and I know my mother was, and other people. And not only did our people suffer, but our land did. So when the buffalo roamed, it contributed positive change to plants and animals. When they slaughtered the buffalo, a lot of plants went extinct, as well as the buffalo. And an important thing about the buffalo is their saliva contain enzymes that help promote the growth of certain grasses. And after they killed off all the buffalo, that I know a lot of the native people I know, they would say that's what caused the Dust Bowl. And I believe that too. And here's an example of the Dust Bowl. And there used to be so much, in fact, most of the major interstates were the trails of the buffalo. So now we're going through decolonization. Do I have any questions? Anybody want to make a comment or anything before I continue on? Well, decons, it's hard to talk to a computer because I'm used to people looking out in the crowd and seeing people. I can't even, I usually make jokes, and it's hard to do that. But decolonization is a process where colonized people, by developing a consciousness based on remnants of tradition, redefine themselves as people and reassert distinct qualities that historically guide their existence. And our people have recognized overwhelming need to reconnect and reclaim what was now taken, and acting to reconnect these bonds. And a good example of that is when I joined the Army when I was 18. I was raised Catholic. I got married in a Catholic church, and I was raising my kids Catholic. And I was living in a military base. And at one time in Virginia Beach, I was a Girl Scout leader, and we went to a Boy Scout jamboree. And while I was there, the Eagle Scouts were going to do an example of Sioux dancing. So I thought, wow, this I got to see. So I went over there, and then the Eagle Scout was talking about the Indians, and he goes, "Can you imagine your dad sitting at home reading the paper, and all of a sudden these people come and force you to live a completely way than what you're used to, and you won't see your mom and dad?" And that made me really tear up. And then he went on to do the example of the dance. And so that night I called my dad up, and I was telling him what the guy said, and he said, "Well, yeah, your grandfather, John Goldenson, his parents were wiped out by the soldiers in the Black Hills. And he kind of grew up an orphan and went to boarding school." And that really made me sad. And then I think about them going to boarding school, and we went to boarding school. And so right there in Virginia Beach, I started to go through decolonization. I started to read books written by Indians. And actually, I started to get angry too, because I stopped going to church. And I think, because of that, my marriage to my husband broke up, because he was a devout Catholic. So now we're realizing that there's other factors that are contributing to the indigenous diet of the Lakota people, current indigenous diet and lifestyle. And that's one of my favorite foods right there, the bologna with potato chips. I used to say, "I need some lettuce," and then I'd put the potato chips on the bologna. And of course, I love Indian tacos. And this is me over here. I love to watch TV all the time. So the plain indigenous people, this is what I believe, this is my theory, that, and this is the same theory as this doctor, that we have a thrifty gene from living years of feast and famine lifestyle. And 50 genes were developed to store fat in times of survival, because also when you live the feast and famine lifestyle, you eat small meals. And so this doctor is one of the doctors that kind of discovered that gene. And he said, as a result, our genes are made to digest and obtain nutrients from the food around us. And these were passed on through generations. And a good example of that is that most indigenous people cannot digest milk because the body stops producing lactase, an enzyme that breaks down the milk and sugar. And Europeans have been drinking milk, and they produce this enzyme for thousands of years because they've been keeping cattle. At this time, I always say, has anyone ever tried to milk a buffalo? I'm just kidding. But that's a good example of it. And I know myself, I'm lactose intolerant, and I love ice cream, but I have to eat ice cream when I'm real safe at home. So another thing I'd like to say is that our body cannot store protein and needs a fresh supply every day. Many individuals who suffer insufficient protein intake could suffer from a wide range of harmful effects, especially the descendants of the hunter and gatherer, who require a high protein quota. And protein carries out important function and repair and maintenance of our cells and body. And here are some examples of protein deficiencies. And one of the things that I think that with me is, now that I'm an adult, I've been diagnosed with dyslexia, ADD, learning disabilities. And then also when I was in the Army, this eye doctor had said to me, you know what, why is it every Indian who I do an eye exam has a really bad eyesight and bad stigmatism? And I used to wonder about that myself because our ancestors never wore glasses. But in my research, I found out that protein deficiency is a significant cause of childhood blindness worldwide. And then I was thinking, like growing up in boarding school, we didn't eat that much meat, or we ate bologna sandwiches or Spam. And so protein deficiency can lead to impaired growth in children and general deterioration in adults. And that's why protein is so important to us. So today we're looking at our ancestors' healthy way of living. I like to go around try to talk to people about developing healthy eating and exercising habits, and trying to look at our life in a holistic spiritual manner. I try to say a prayer all the time, every time I fix a little food, and I try to be in a really good mind. And plus, I like the fact that the buffalo's coming back, and because the buffalo is so healthy, and I think it's really important for us as descendants of Plains Indigenous people. Uh-oh, my thing won't move. Peter. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions at this point? There it goes. So one thing I learned about buffalo is that a lot of people call it, a lot of scientists who study buffalo, they call it the salmon of the plains, because they found out that the buffalo fat has just as much omegas and CLA as the fish do, which is considered good fats, which enhances the body's ability to promote a healthy metabolic system. And the body cannot produce CLA. It's obtained through the diet. And the buffalo is very high in that, also any wild animal. And so according to some human clinical trials, it shows that CLA may reduce body fat while preserving muscle tissue. There was this one study that I read about where they put some subjects in rooms, and they gave some people CLA, but they just made them sit down and watch like people exercising. And the other one, they didn't give them CLA, but the ones that they gave CLA who just watched the sports lost weight. And so I thought, well, I got to get it. But but I don't know if that works. But also, so I've been doing a lot of study on buffalo fat, and that's one of the things I put in my when I make buffalo wasna. And I found out that the fatty acid is so close to the way our human body is, that it's a very important nutrient for skin repair and regeneration. And so, and you know, one of our biggest organ is our skin. And so when you put, so it's very healthy to use tallow as to put, you know, to dry for dry skin. And also, it's good for other uses too. You know, you can make a candle out of it. And anyway, I got some tallow that I just did the other day, but it tastes really good in in wasna. And you can fry eggs with it, and the fat is around the kidneys, and bone marrow is really good for you too.
Jerry, someone asked in the chat if you think that applies to bear grease as well.
I don't know about bear grease. I haven't really researched bear grease. So I really can't tell. I know one time, long time ago, before I even knew all this, there was an Indian lady. Her hair was thick and, you know, braided, and she was old. And I asked her what she did to keep her hair thick and nice, and she said she added bear grease. And so that was before internet, and I was like, how can I get bear grease? And I never did, but I never did any research on bear grease either, you know, so I really don't know. I'm sorry about that. But one thing in my research, I found out that dried meat is dehydrated. And so like, I think I put that up there, like 1 pound of dried meat is equivalent to like a 1/4 pound. 1 pound of fresh meat is equivalent to 1 pound of fresh meat equivalent to 1/4 dried meat. Oh, here, I put it here, 2 or 3 pounds make 1 pound of jerky, gosh. And the dry and dehydrated is the oldest way they preserve food to make it last longer and safe to eat. And our ancestors just dried the meat in the sun. They didn't put any kind of preservative in it. And one thing I like to say about dried meat is it takes the longest to digest, and it makes you feel full. And because when you eat it and you drink a lot of water, it rehydrates in your stomach, and it raises your iron level within 15 minutes, and gives you a lot of energy, feeds your brain, and you know, all that. So in conclusion, in pre-colonization time, less than 150 years ago, our ancestors lived in harmony with nature. They were very healthy and lived a long time. But due to colonization, we suffered a loss of culture, loss of land, loss of voice, loss of health and well-being, and the loss of buffalo and our understanding of buffalo and bison, because when I grew up, we just ate. I really didn't know about buffalo until, well, I knew that we ate buffalo, but I really didn't really know it till I got diagnosed with lupus. And Kibi Conte was a dietitian at IHS where I worked, and she started talking to me about how nutritional buffalo was. And at the time I got diagnosed, my uric acid was high, so the doctor said to stop eating meat. And I was like, God, you know, that's what I eat. And so she was like, well, buffalo meat doesn't have uric acid. And so that made, you know, eating that, you know, has really helped me contain my lupus, besides the medication stuff. And now we're going through decolonization. We're understanding our history of colonization, rediscovering our ancestral tradition and cultural values. And I'm in this play called Dakota Daughters, and I play Sitting Bull's daughter. And we all had to write our own part. And so when I was writing my part, I was doing a lot of research, and I read in the book, this book, Voices of Wounded Knee, that my great-grandfather Lip, when he was, you know, pushed to the reservation, he decided to settle in Pass Creek, which is on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And I think that they were trying to move him to Rosebud. And so at the time of Wounded Knee, he had went to Pine Ridge and, you know, because of Manifest Destiny, this part was Catholic, like the Pine Ridge, and the other part was Episcopal. I think that's what so Chief Lip was being helped by the Episcopal people, and He came to Pine Ridge to talk to Agent Royer, who was politically appointed to Pine Ridge. And I heard that he was really scared of the Indians. He was scared of the ghost dance, and that the Indian people used to call him white man afraid of us Indians. But anyway, in there, I was reading that Chief Lip was camped in the yard of the Episcopal Church when they were bringing the Indians in from Wounded Knee, the ones that were shot or hurt. And I told that to my dad when I was researching it before my dad died. And he had said, no wonder, he said, I used to hear Kate saying something like she was there. And I used to wonder because she lived way in Wamblee, which is a long ways away, but here she's saying that she was there at the church. So now we understand why. And so, that kind of stuff, like this knowing where we come from, knowing what happened to us as a people. I mean, growing up, I didn't even know that. They didn't discuss it in the classrooms, or my parents didn't discuss it. And I grew up around Lakota speaking people, both my parents, I think, my older brothers and my aunts and cousins, a lot of people spoke Lakota and we didn't. But I can't, it's hard for me to retain the language. I think my daughter then can speak Lakota more than I do. And I have a tendency of pronouncing words wrong. I took my dad one time to a presentation like this. And when I got home, my mom asked my dad, well, how'd she do? And she goes, she slaughtered the Lakota, she slaughtered Lakota words. And I know that's what I do, and I don't know why it's like that, but I understand now, but why I don't understand, why I can't speak Lakota, but I really wish that I could. So, but I was just thinking about this the other day because my daughter, she moved to Cedar Rapids, and they went down to this furniture store, and it says that they're going out of business after 125 years. And I go, oh my gosh, that's the same time that Wounded Knee occurred. So people were living, with brick buildings like this, and then we were still living, our ancestors were living in teepees, and it just that was like a wow moment for me during this time. And so I had added that to my presentation. Oh, this is a saying that I found with because I'm starting to research things about societies, warrior societies, because I always say that I belong to the Watecha Society, and Watecha is leftovers. And I love leftovers. Like if you go to a powwow or someone's party, or someone's house to eat, I'll take the leftovers. And I go, well, I belong to, I belong to Watecha Society. But I was looking up and I came across this by Sitting Bull. A warrior for us is one who sacrifices himself for the good of others. His task is to take care of the elderly, the defensive, those who cannot provide for themselves, above all, children, the future of humanity. I thought that was really profound too. Let me see if I got something else here. Oh, I think back here. Okay, so right here, this is the end of my presentation. So I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my message with you about the importance of traditional food. And like I said, it's really hard because I'm talking to you on Facebook and I can't see anybody, because usually if I see people, I can tell jokes or whatever, But I also want to say that when I make wasna, I make it very, I try to be very respectful, and I make it with pride. I always say prayer, and I make a offering every time to the ancestors, and even before I do anything, I always say a prayer to my ancestors. So through the process of decolonization, I'm embracing myself, my culture, my history. I'm grateful to my ancestors, and I honor their struggles, and will always give back to my community. And I want to thank these people because they're very instrumental in helping me with my research. And I had a business where I did provide wasna to the dialysis dialysis center in Pine Ridge. And Fred DeBray was the president of the Intertribal Bison, and I learned a lot through him, and he provided me a lot of the buffalo. And one thing that he told me was with Intertribal Bison that they try to follow the traditions, like they'll say a prayer before killing the buffalo, and and I learned a lot, just how they handle the buffalo through Intertribal Bison. And Kibby is, I just love Kibby, and we've been friends since I met her in Pine Ridge so long ago. She was single. She was married, but now she has 2 grown kids, and and I always learn something from her. But and I really love her a lot too. So that's the end of my presentation, and I put some dog jokes because they always say dog eat people. We were dog eating people, dog eaters. And so, and then when I moved back to Pine Ridge and I was working as a housekeeper, they had a lot of jokes. And that's one thing I like, you know, going to powwows and stuff. People always telling jokes, and I like the humor. And so I collected these jokes that I heard, and I like them. I like the jokes about the dog eatings. I like the one that says, "What do you call a fried bread and Indian men? What do fried bread and Indian men have in common? They're both round, brown, and greasy." Anyway, so that's the end of my presentation, but I'm open for questions. See, that wasn't good. Anybody have any
Jerry,
questions?
we've got a lot of folks really expressing their gratitude on Facebook and on here. I know John Gozen Center said, "Thank you, a very inspirational presentation,
Oh, I love
especially
that.
from experiential discovery and research. We all need to take such an initiative. Thank you."
Mhm.
Um, you were talking about how you weren't sure anyone was enjoying your jokes, but we had some people really laughing. And Lisa said, "I'm enjoying your jokes, laughing here in my kitchen." Um, and I see Anne Marie on in the chat added another question. What do you call a puppy running through the res?
What?
Fast fast food.
What? Fast. Oh, yeah,
Fast
that's right.
food.
Fast food.
Yeah.
I like that.
So
Yeah.
and then we had someone online say, "I'm not native, but for me the right protein balance really helps with depression too. Such important information and history. Thank you for sharing your knowledge."
Yeah. And one thing I was going to say about the depression too, because I didn't realize I was depressed. And I didn't even know I was ADD or had these learning disabilities, but I did, you know, drop out of high school. And I used to run away from boarding schools because I thought things got so difficult for me. And so, and I was working a job at Spiegel's in Rapid City, and I got fired because I was late all the time. I'm always late all the time. And so the lady who fired me, she said, "You're a good," I was a, you know, really good worker, but I was late. And that was their policy. And she said, "You should go to the doctor and get checked." And I go, "Really? For being late?" So I did go to the VA, and I told them, and they did all kinds of tests on me. And that's when I found out I'm dyslexic, you know, and I have learning disabilities, and, you know, I have no concept of time. And so then I guess I was depressed, and the doctor tried me on. I didn't really want to take any kind of medication, but we did try different antidepressants, and I was taking Prozac for a while, and I went to her and I said, "I don't think this Prozac's helping." And she says, "Well, I think it is." And I go, "Well, how can you tell?" And she goes, "Because you quit talking about your ex-husband." And I thought, "Oh, that's right." Because now that I'm on Prozac, you know, I do have this need to read books and study. And before that, I was married to, you know, Roger for over 25 years. And I was just thinking, "Oh my God, I'm gonna die alone," you know, and this and that. And, but I did have you know, I did start feeling more positive. So I know that depression runs, especially when you have traumatic stuff that happened in the background. And I had told my doctor once they should put it in the water, but I know that's not true. But anyway, so I think that's important too. Eating protein and exercising, you know, because sometimes I'd be really sad and I go, "Before I'm, you know, I got a lot of friends and I love my kids, and why am I feeling this way?" But I know it's depression, you know. So any other questions?
Well, thanks for sharing that, Jerry.
Mhm.
I just wanted to, I wondered if you could expand just a little bit on um, the medicinal or the health value of wasna, especially connected to you were saying that you worked with the dialysis center and that was something they provided to dialysis patients. I wonder if you
Yes,
could
because
just
yeah,
expand on
because
that a
Kibby,
little
yeah,
bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
Kibby was researching it, you know, the wasna, and she actually had some of the elders eat the wasna, and she took. That's how we found out that it raises your iron level within 15 minutes. And you know, like when people on dialysis, they usually offer them I can't think, but that it's a thing that has milk in it, you know. And you know, dialysis does so much damage to your body, and wasna is a really good food that that your body can tolerate. And so it was very helpful. And like I said, it's dehydrated, so a little bit goes a long way, and it can help you with weight loss, and you know, and I know that there's some people that ate it and reversed their diabetes, and Kibby worked with those people, and I don't have diabetes yet, but I probably will because I love cake. I always say I save my carbohydrates for cake. I don't want to eat bread, but I'll eat cake. And but you know, and also this research here motivated me to eat you know, at least 4 ounces of fresh meat a day, even if it's not buffalo chicken or fish, because like you said, like I put on here, that it's very important to, you know, wasna is I mean buffalo meat really helps. Eating a little bit, you know, like you need a fresh supply every day. And I think about that because when I was younger, and I used to go for days without eating, I was really skinny, and I hate everything, you know, like when I married my husband, he was a French Creole, and then we had our 4 kids, and people used to say, what kind of food do Indians eat? And my husband say plain food, because she's a Plains Indian. And when I used to cook for him, I didn't put any kind of seasoning on my meat. I would just take a big roast in the refrigerator, and then, you know, he used to eat it, so that I know that he loved me, because no no seasoning on it. But then after, you know, while he would cook gumbo and sauce piquant and jambalaya, and that stuff is really spicy. It took me a long time to eat that. And um, so I know that I know I probably was really unhealthy, because I also know when at one time I got diagnosed with it was that kissing disease, and I kept getting strep throat over and over. And I think I was in my 30s, and I kept getting strep throat too, and I was on all kinds of antibiotics. And and then I remember my Aunt Lucy used to take this vitamin called Shackley, and she stayed with us in Fort Polk, and she took care of Frances, my daughter Frances, and Tanya. They were babies. I was still breastfeeding for Frances when I was in the Army, and then when we'd leave at like 4 o'clock in the morning to go do PT, she would throw vitamins in us in our hands, and she had powdered protein, and she cleaned the house and all the Shackley products, and she really believed in that stuff. And so we went to this ice cream shop, and there was someone that was saying they're going to give a demonstration on a water machine. So I said, well, maybe that, and found out it was a water machine made by Shackley. So then I said, oh, well, let me order some vitamins, because, you know, I remember my aunt used to take that. She's very healthy. So I started taking the vitamins, but the lady that sold it to me, she started to educate me. And so before that, when I used to feed my kids bologna and hot dogs, Kraft macaroni and cheese, white bread, I'd buy canned vegetables, like a case of peas, and, you know, and I thought I was doing a really good job. But after you know, being educated by her, you know, I started to buy real cheese, and, you know, change the diet, cut out a lot of stuff. And my disease went away. Also, yeah, because I had really bad complexion, and my periods weren't regular. And I think this doctor told me I had something, you know, those stuff that you have to take out to they'll give you a hysterectomy. And but I started to take like the protein and the vitamins, and I changed the diet and start drinking more water and exercising, and my face cleared up. And so I used to you know, give my kids the vitamins too, and they hated it. You know, I used to have to put a gun to them. I said, eat this or broccoli, you know, but, you know, so I think that education is important, and eating the right food, because I know bologna is not that good for you. It's a comfort food. So is fried bread, you know. I remember I met a lady in Hawaii. She was from Sisseton. And in fact, she went to Flandre Indian School like I did too, but she was younger than me, Becky Moyer. And she came over to my house in Hawaii, and she had spam. She had the fried bread cut in half with spam in it with mayonnaise, and it was so good. And so we talk about, you know, the fatty on the meat and all that, and or the toniga. I used to love toniga, but I know a lot of that's not good for you, you know. So I kind of use it as a treat, but I do eat wasna all the time. I love it, you know. And I'm 60 something years old. And I don't have diabetes. I don't have high blood pressure. I don't get enough exercise though. And I still like to eat a lot of cakes or donuts. If someone says, come over and visit me, and I'll say, well, I can't. And they go, well, I have donuts. I go, okay, I'll be right there. And one time my daughter was going to visit a friend, and I said, well, wait in the car, because lupus also makes you really tired. And the people says, why doesn't your mother want to come in? She goes, oh, she's going to rest in the car. He goes, well, make her. What can we do to make her come in? He said, offer her a cake. And so the wife came to the door and says, hey, Jerry, we got cake in here. And I go, okay. And then I guess they bet $5 that I would. Francis bet the guy that $5 that I would say yes. And so I went in there. He was giving Francis $5. I go, for what? He said, I said you would come in for a piece of cake. It's crazy. Okay, so is there anything else?
Yep, I have one last question that just came in, Jerry, and it was someone asked, Michela was asking, how do you get your ingredients for the wasna? How do you gather yours?
I right now I buy my buffalo meat from Western Meats on St. Pat's, and that there's that other one I always Wild Idea. I haven't bought from Inner Child Bison because I have I don't know why I haven't gone there for a while. But when I did have my business, I did buy directly from Inner Child Bison, and I worked with the people in Sturgis and they would just dry the meat. So I would buy like thousands of dollars of dried meat every month from Sturgis Meat, and they had this big machine that would dry the meat, and no preservatives was added to it. And then also I would get the kidney fat from the meat place in Sturgis, who I worked with the wasna. But now I get the kidney fat from Wild Idea. They sell it in a container, which it makes it really easy for me. And what I do is I put it in a slow cooker and add a cup of water. And overnight, I drain it, and you get, I'll show you some fat that I just made right here. This is from, I think this is fat is from the fat of 3 packages from Wild Idea. And I put that in a slow cooker, added a cup of water, cooked it overnight, and then I strained it. And then I dried the meat myself. But when it gets warmer, I'm going to take the meat outside. Of course, spray it with the bergamot and water. But during the summer, during the wintertime, I dried in the oven, and then I put a fan on it for a while. And I found out that the dried meat has to be really dried, because if you leave it not dried, because even when I got the dried meat from Sturgis, it wasn't really that dried. So I would have to put it in a container and because it'll get moldy. So making the wasna, I've been making wasna for a long time, and it's been like a learning experience for me. And I know there's different ways that people make wasna, because some people make wasna balls, wasna cake, but my grandmother used to eat it loose, and that's how I like to make it loose. Let me see if I have some wasna here. I don't, but I do the same thing with the choke cherries. I dry them, and then I grind them up, and I have some choke cherries that I grinded up here. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see. Can you see that? And so then I grind it up, seed and all, and I grind it up as small as I can. I break the seeds up too, and I add that into the wasna and the kidney fat, and it's so good, so good. And sometimes I pat myself on the back because it's so good. But it's a live and learn process. Anything else?
I think the last question, Jerry, is do you boil the bergamot in the water?
I don't boil the bergamot in the water. Yeah, sometimes I do. I put it on low, but most of the time I'll put it out in the sun. And I dry the bergamot and I put it out in the sun with water, and then I'll strain it into one of those spray bottles. And but I haven't got a husband yet from it, so I don't believe it. No, I was kidding. But I do. Bergamot is my favorite herb to use, and I can't wait for the season to come up because I need a lot. Last summer I went to Louisiana, so I missed all the seasons, and so I have very little. I have no Teamstula, I have no sage, I have no bergamot. So I'm just waiting for the season to start up again, and I'm going to be out there now. And anybody who wants to come Teamstula digging with me, and I can show you how, we can go. Because I love to take people out. I had taken my my best friend Dawn Dillon, her son out, or her grandson, and there was a snake, and he threw his shovel at it. And then he comes running to me and says, "Go get my shovel. There's a snake over there." I go, "Why should I? Why don't you ask your mom?" He goes, "Because I don't want her to die." But yeah. And then my brother made a wasna digger that really works well, and so we got two of them now. So if anybody wants to come, I'll be more than happy. We could go out and dig Team Slow.
I see at least one person in the chat saying they want to go with you, so they can reach out to you. There's one more.
On
I
my
think
email, they can reach out to the Gmail. Also, if I'm going to pick berries or gather chiaka, or I learned a new plant this last summer. It's called placano. No, it's called plantain, and it grows all over. It looks like it's a weed actually, but it has so much medicine power, and that I'm going to work a lot with that this year.
And I think one last question snuck in. Lisa was just asking if you eat bapa and fat.
Oh yes, I do eat a lot of dried meat because I dry my own meat now, and it's not pretty like some, like I know. Remember when my grandmother and my cousin Wanda and them, they called it gabla, and they would take the meat and kind of cut it unrolling, and then they would hang it up, and they had a sharp knife and all that, and so. But what I do is I just cut the meat as small as I can, and I know it's not the traditional way, and it doesn't look pretty when it's dried, and I would never try to sell it, but I eat it all the time, and I give it to my grandkids to eat, and I do love dried meat.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jerry. I don't see any more questions. I want to send my gratitude to you for
Thank you too,
sharing all
Peter.
this information and answering people's questions. And again, hopefully people can track down your email again in the presentation. It will be available on Facebook in our videos section and on our YouTube channel. And thank you so much. We've had an amazing winter camp series over the season, and this was an amazing ending to it. So thank you so much, and
thank you.
Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye.